Okay, more Walt Whitman. We can never get too much Walt Whitman. I wanted to call your attention to the fact that Walt Whitman, being as current as anything, this is this week's issue of the New York Times Style magazine. And I know that doesn't look like Walt Whitman, but if you look at the text, Walt Whitman is the cover story. This is all about, and it's written by this really just terrific writer. I forget his name now, but he lives in Brooklyn, a couple of blocks from the spot where the first edition of Leaves of Grass was printed. He's a gay writer. He's very much engaged in has a much clearer view of the whole the whole homoerotic aspect of Whitman's stuff, which is an important aspect. But just is brilliant, and he goes back and forth between Whitman's day and our day now. He's walking, through Central Park where they had the tent set up for the COVID victims. Then he's walking where they had the tents set up for the Civil War victims in Whitman's day. And it's just a lovely, lovely essay. So it's in this week's New York Times Style magazine.
Thank you.
Also, thought we'd start by looking at a few more photos of Walt. I should mention that he aged very quickly. Partly it's because early in the Civil War, he got the word that one of his brothers had been wounded in battle, and he rushed down to Virginia to find his brother at the front and see what he could do for him. Turned out his brother was not badly wounded, but when Whitman saw the horrible state, and he described seeing a pile of amputated hands and arms and legs, enough to fill a whole cart. And so he wound up going to Washington, to DC, where the federal buildings, they'd actually cleared out a lot of federal buildings, were just using the offices and the hallways for temporary hospital. There were so many, horribly wounded soldiers coming in. And, Washington was so close to where so much of the fighting was going on. So he wound up for the rest of the war being there as a volunteer nurse. And, a lot of these, doing what he could to comfort these men and, giving them a little chocolate or tobacco or something. And a lot of them were illiterate. He would help them write letters home and so forth. But the trauma of that aged him very, very quickly. This is a photo of him. Actually, this is at the beginning of the war. He's already aging pretty quickly. This is only 5 years after Leaves of Grass, first edition. He was going gray early. But he was one of these guys that was just kind of born to be to be a good-looking old man, This one's kind of a rare photo because he's had a haircut. Kind of shocked all his friends. And this is one, a very rare photo because he's with someone else. Normally he liked the camera. It is possible that he was the most photographed person of the 19th century. People loved photographing him, and he loved being photographed. But this is a rare one where he's sharing the camera with someone. This is Peter Doyle, who was evidently probably his boyfriend for several years.
Is that right? But I look at him.
Yeah, and Peter Doyle's got this kind of mischievous look on his face. Where Walt's got this much more devoted gaze. It was one rainy night. Walt in the city. Walt got on a streetcar, and Peter Doyle was the streetcar driver. And Whitman's taste ran to rough trade, streetcar drivers, stevedores, these kind of often uneducated, manly men. And Peter Doyle apparently was his pal for, I think, about 5 years.
Wow. How about that? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
What would he have been?
He look
That one.
Yeah.
old. Oh, sweet.
Couple of kids in typical Victorian kids
yeah.
dress, which is very frou-frou for boys and girls. There's one in particular I want to show you if I can find it. Oh, this one's beautiful.
Oh, yeah. We've seen that before. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
His wait a minute. So this is him in his last years. So he had a stroke and was essentially paralyzed.
Oh, wow.
And lived out his last days in Camden, New Jersey, for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
Dean, was that Peter Doyle with him for those last years too? Or is that?
I don't believe so, no.
All right, so he took
No.
off a little earlier.
Mm-hmm. This is here. He's attended by his last and favorite nurse, Warren Fritzinger. Worry, Whitman said, is faithful, true, and loyal. Whitman called him his sailor boy. He had spent years at sea.
Oh, yeah. Sailor boy.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow, that look
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I mean, really just born to be
Haven't seen
a
it.
sage,
Yeah.
or at
What?
least to play one on TV, Okay, let's read some. Did any of you happen to decide that there were some passages in Song of Myself that you wanted to read, to have us discuss? Okay. Oh, I've got to get the thing on the thing. I got to get the text on the screen. Hang on 1 second, please. Okay, so since we're looking at we've sort of gotten into the homoerotic region of Whitman. Let's go to section 11 of Song of Myself. And I'll get it up on the screen for you. Okay, everyone seeing this?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, 28 young men bathe by the shore, 28 young men and all so friendly. 28 years of womanly life and also lonesome. Okay. She owns the fine house by the rise of the bank. She hides, handsome and richly dressed, aft the blinds of the window. So everyone get the basic picture here?
Yes.
Here's these 28 hunky guys bathing in the river, and peekabooing at them from behind the blinds is the 28-year-old spinster. Which of the young men does she like the best? Ah, the homeliest of them is beautiful to her. Where are you off to, lady? For I see you. You splash in the water there, yet stay stock still in your room. So this is her fantasy now, her imagination. She's joining them. Dancing and laughing along the beach came the 29th bather. The rest did not see her, but she saw them and loved them. The beards of the young men glistened with wet. It ran from their long hair. Little streams passed all over their bodies. An unseen hand also passed over their bodies. It descended tremblingly from their temples and ribs. The young men flowed on their backs. Their white bellies bulged to the sun. They do not ask who seizes fast to them. They do not know who puffs and declines with pendant and bending arch. They do not think whom they souse with spray. Whoopee! Okay, this is hot stuff. So let's go through this. I think you're all getting the basic picture. This is again, this is the kind of sexy stuff that convinced Emerson to withdraw his early endorsement of Whitman. This was, and by the way, Emily Dickinson, someone in a letter, a friend in a letter asked Emily Dickinson whether she had read Whitman, and she said, no, I haven't, but I have not read Mr. Whitman's book, but a friend tells me that it is disgraceful. Okay. In fact, sometime after the war, he was fired from, he had a government job there in Washington, working, I think, in the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And his boss happened to one day pick up a copy of Leaves of Grass from Whitman's desk and started reading it and immediately fired him.
Oh my.
So 28 young men bathe by the shore. 28 young men also friendly, 28 years of womanly life and also lonesome. Now, of all the numbers that Whitman could use here, why 28? It's got a good rhythm to it, but so would 26 or 35 or 42. It would have the same rhythm.
Earlier in the reading, wasn't 28 something a year that was special for him?
He states his age as 37, I think. I think that's what you're
right.
thinking of. Yeah. What else is 28? Okay, I think the center girls know the answer. They're chuckling. Come on, center girls, share. Go ahead. Don't be bashful.
I mean, it's a ripe age for young people, right?
Young
especially
men,
if you're a
especially.
37-year-old. It's the perfect 37 to 28 time.
Okay, yeah, okay. And also, there's 28 days in the lunar month, right? In the cycle of the moon, 28 days, and at least kind of iconically, 28 days in a woman's menstrual cycle. Okay, so
Whoever guessed it.
say it again, Kelly.
I said, whoever guessed it.
Whoever guessed it, I guessed it. Whitman guessed it, and I guessed that that's what he guessed. Right?
I have a question,
Yes.
Louisa.
Uh-huh.
How old was he when he wrote this poem?
I think this is in
Towards
the
the
first.
end?
Yeah, I believe this is in the first edition, which he wrote in the early, over a couple of years in the early 1850s. He was born, I think, in 1820. So he's in his early 30s.
Could it possibly be the number of lovers that he's had so far?
Could be. Could be. We don't know. We don't know. And in fact, there's other passages where he makes it where he implies that he's kind of like more like the widow here. He's like living all these erotic fantasies, and he talks about elsewhere in his writing about all these handsome young men he sees in the street, but he kind of berates himself for not scoring with them. In any case, Louisa, I would think that probably that's not the case, because only he, if that were the case, only he would know it. It doesn't help the poem. It doesn't help the poem. What would help the poem would be you'd have to have something that can talk to the readers. And the readers, even though most of us on the conscious level might not pick up on 28, at least on a more subconscious, on a more subliminal level, we're gonna, that rings a bell. We all know somewhere subliminally that 28 is the that's the lunar cycle. That's the female cycle. Okay. So it implies subtly, and poets do this stuff subtly. They have different there's kind of different levels of how overt stuff is. Some of it's very subliminal. So almost kind of subliminally, we have this invocation of the woman's biological cycles, the egg ripening, looking to be fertilized. Remember, there's an earlier section of Song of Myself where he says, urge and urge and urge, always the procreant urge of the world. So he sees this, it's the urge of the individual animal or human and of the species and of the whole world, the whole universe. So I think that's implied here. 28 years of womanly life and all so lonesome. In those times especially, that was, you were getting to be an old maid at that point. She owns the fine house by the rise of the bank. She hides, handsome and richly dressed, aft the blinds of the window. Aft is a nautical term, it means behind. Which of the young men does she like the best? Ah, the homeliest of them is beautiful to her. Where are you off to, lady? For I see you. You splash in the water there, yet stay stock still in your room. So here's the power of imagination. The power to go remember, imagination, the root of the word imagination is image. It's the power, the ability to see things at a distance, to see images when you're not there. It doesn't necessarily mean dreaming stuff up. It can be almost like clairvoyant here. And we're going to be looking in a few moments at one or two other sections of Song of Myself where we see him doing this. We see him moving his clairvoyant telescope all over the map. Dancing and laughing along the beach came the 29th bather, the woman, of course. The rest did not see her, but she saw them and loved them. And then we get into the gay porn. The beards of the young men glistened with wet. It ran from their long hair. Little streams passed all over their bodies. Okay, the language is so simple, but he knows to say just enough so we see how nice and cut their musculature is, right? These guys are toned. We see the streams of water streaming between their muscles. We see the streams of water glistening in the sun, right? I didn't have to tell you that. You saw it all. And then it gets really hot. An unseen hand also passed over their bodies. Of course, that's her hand. It descended tremblingly from their temples and ribs. So, okay, if the hand starts at their temples, then it goes to their ribs and it's descending. Okay, right? We're heading south, folks. And of course she's a virgin. She's having in her imagination, she's making love to this whole harem of 28 men here. The young men float on their backs, their white bellies bulge to the sun. Okay, and it's literally it's their bellies that are bulging, but the key word here is bulge. And notice the repetition of the B sound. Their bellies bulge. I mean, that just feels like it sounds like a belly bulging or an erect penis bulging. They do not ask, right? And they got to be floating on their backs so that she in her imagination can mount them. They do not know who puffs and declines with pendant and bending arch. So we see her back going up and down here, arching up and down. And then you should pardon the expression, climax of the piece. They do not think whom they souse with spray. All right. So this is an old poetic device called having it both ways. Right? On one level, it's just these men innocently, splashing and spraying each other with the water. And on another level, this is total, male ejaculation and total abandon. They do not think whom, right? They don't, it's just this kind of pure, all the, oh, I'm your boyfriend, I'm your girlfriend, we're engaged, this is a legitimate act sanctioned by society. No, it's not. That's all gone. They do not think, right? The thinking mind is gone. It's out of the way. There's an Emily Dickinson poem, and by the way, Emily Dickinson could just about have been the, right, the 28-year-old virgin peeking from behind the blinds. She has one of her poems, which were all secret poems. They were all unpublished, as you remember, till after she died. And she's got one man that she had an obsessive thing with, wrote him a lot of letters, and she wrote him this poem that said, "Wild nights." Oh, we read that one, right? Wild nights were I with thee, done with the compass, done with the chart. Right? That done with the compass, done. In other words, the whole intellect, logic, rational, what's right, what's wrong, all thrown away in this just wildness. So this is that same spirit. Okay, where's this other piece I want to read? Here it is. Section 15. Buckle up. This is incredible stuff. I mean, right away you can see all these repetitions of the word the. We see this is going to be this rhythmic incantatory thing. It's this, and let's see what happens in each line. The pure contralto sings in the organ loft. So you all know what a contralto is. It's a woman. It's a low woman's voice. Woman with a low voice. So, and the organ loft, that would be in a church where the organ pipes are. So he's seeing, he's hearing. Next line. The carpenter dresses his plank. right? In other words, the carpenter's at work on a plank of wood. The tongue of his foreplane whistles its wild ascending lisp. You know what the foreplane is? I had to take a woodshop class at Van Nuys Junior High School, and we had to take the plane and go whoosh, whoosh, to try to smooth out a piece of wood. Now, here's the question. I know, because I took this woodshop class, which I got a D in, by the way, because I have no manual dexterity. But I can remember the sound that the foreplane makes. It goes whoosh, 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 whoosh. But how do you represent that? How do you describe that? I wouldn't know how to describe it because I'm not a poet, but Whitman knows how to describe it. Whistles its wild ascending lisp. Right? You hearing that? How great is that? It's a wild ascending, it goes up, lisp. Fantastic. The married and unmarried children ride home to their Thanksgiving dinner. The pilot seizes the kingpin. So a kingpin is on the helm of a boat, the wheel. You've got all those pins sticking out, and the kingpin is the one that's at the top. It's a bigger one that's at the top when the boat's going straight ahead. He heaves down with a strong arm. The mate stands braced in the whaleboat. Lance and harpoon are ready. Okay, so seeing these first 1, 2, 3, 5 lines, you see what's going on here? Each line is a different person or a few people, different activity, different occupation, different location. It's like he's scanning with his psychic eye, with his clairvoyant eye. He's scanning all over the city, the country, all over America, looking for and seeing all these people doing all these different activities, all these moods, some ecstatic, some miserable, some all these things, and there's so it's complete diversity, but what's the thread? Is there a thread that holds them together? Is there a thread that holds them together? Well, in the poem, the thread is supplied by the structure, the rhythm, the fact that each one fits in one of these lines that starts with the word the. Okay, you see that? You see how he's using the sound and the structure of the poetry to make us see what all enlightened people see, which is that all these things, all these people that look so different, they are so different, but they're all, as they say as the Buddhists say, they're all there's the one flavor, the one taste that runs through all of them, the one essence, the beingness. So it's almost as if he's making us feel that vein of sameness, that vein of beingness run through all this difference in the structure of the poem itself. The duck shooter walks by, silent and cautious stretches. The deacons are ordained with crossed hands at the altar. The spinning girl retreats and advances to the hum of the big wheel. The farmer stops by the bars as he walks on a first day loaf and looks at the oats and rye. First day means the first day of the week, Sunday. Yeah. You have Sunday off, so that's your first day loaf. The lunatic is carried at last to the asylum, a confirmed case. He will never sleep anymore as he did in the cot in his mother's bedroom. By the way, Whitman had several brothers, and one of them was considered they called him his idiot brother. He was mentally defective, and Whitman shared a room with him for years. But again, this is part of the contrast between the Walt of the poems and the Walter who wrote them. Walt is this, as you can see, he's ranging clairvoyantly all over the world. He's making love to all these women and men. Walt lived at home in his mom's apartment in Brooklyn, sharing a bedroom with his idiot brother. for much of his life until the Civil War. The jour printer, the jour, of course, in French is day. So this is a printer who does, day jobs, piece jobs, which is Whitman did that. Whitman started off as a printer's apprentice. Mark Twain also started his life as a printer's apprentice, working in his brother's newspaper. It's a good way to develop a sense of language. Literally get your hands on the letters. The jour printer with his gray head and gaunt jaws works at his case. He turns his quid of tobacco while his eyes blur with the manuscript. By the way, if you ever look at a picture of in the old days when they set type like this by hand, they had two cases, one down here that had the small letters and one set like this that had the capital letters, and that's why they're known as lowercase and uppercase.
Okay.
Dean,
Yes.
I'm just seeing the poetry. I'm not seeing you at all.
Yeah, that's okay. Nothing much to see. You can control that from your side, but I can't really can't walk you through it right now. Just know I'm gesticulating as usual. The malformed limbs are tied to the surgeon's table. What is removed drops horribly in a pail. Ugh.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. But you see, he doesn't look away from anything. Because the beingness has to be everywhere. This is like the famous the thing in Zen, where you always ask your teacher, that you ask the Roshi, what is the Buddha? And what is not who is the Buddha, what is the Buddha? In other words, what is this essence of enlightenment? What is this essence of infinite beingness? What is the Buddha? And sometimes the teacher will say, the Buddha is the beautiful sunset, or the Buddha is the beautiful golden temple, or the Buddha is the sound of the wild geese as they disappear over the western horizon, which is all very lovely. But sometimes the Roshi will say, the Buddha is a pile of cow shit in the middle of the road. Okay, and that's my favorite. Can you see why? Because that's more significant. It's, the Buddha is the beautiful sunset. That's too easy. That's too easy. We can be sentimental about that. We can't be sentimental about a pile of cow shit. If the Buddha is what the Buddha is supposed to be, and to put it in, Judeo-Christian terms, if God is what God is supposed to be, he, she, it must be everywhere, must be everything. So must be the whatever awful thing the surgeons are removing and dropping into the pail, as much as it's, the duck shooter and the deacons. So in a way, every line here that starts with the duck shooter, the deacons, the spinning girl, we could say the Buddha is a duck shooter walking by. The Buddha is the deacons. The Buddha is the spinning girl, right? It's that same essence running through it all. The quadroon girl is sold at the auction stand. A quadroon means 1/4 black, right?
Oh.
Yes. You have like half black was mulatto, 1/4 black was quadroon, 1/8 was octoroon. They had names for all of this. And they had what's called the 1 drop rule. If you had 1 drop of Negro blood in your veins, you were considered black and you could be enslaved. And he saw this. He took one trip west he went down the river to New Orleans. He had a job as a newspaper editor in New Orleans for a little while. And he saw all this. He stood and saw slaves being auctioned off. The drunkard nods by the barroom stove. The thing is, the language is so simple and straightforward, but Is it just me, or are you seeing all of these?
Yeah.
Yes. And I can't tell you how he does it. It's the most simple, straightforward language, but he makes us see it. And I think in order to do that, he has to be seeing it. I think there's some magic that happens. If he's seeing it vividly enough, and then he writes it and gets himself out of the way enough, not making the language too fancy, his vision is like shines through the words and we can see. That's a miracle. The machinist rolls up his sleeves. The policeman travels his beat. The gatekeeper marks who pass. The young fellow drives the express wagon. I love him, though I do not know him. He liked drivers. The half-breed straps on his light boots to compete in the race. The Western turkey shooting draws old and young. Some lean on their rifles, some sit on logs. Out from the crowd steps the marksman, takes his position, levels his piece. The groups of newly come immigrants cover the wharf or levee as the woolly pates hoe. Woolly pates means the black people. Pate is your head, woolly hair. As the woolly pates hoe in the sugar field, the overseer views them from his saddle. The bugle calls in the ballroom, the gentlemen run for their partners, the dancers bow to each other, right? You see this whole cotillion scene going on. The youth lies awake in the cedar-roofed garret and harks to the musical rain. So quiet, so beautiful. The wolverine sets traps on the creek that helps fill the Huron. The squaw, wrapped in her yellow hemmed cloth, is offering moccasins and bead bags for sale. Right, so this helps place us historically. This is at a time when the Indians are being moved off their land. They're starting to show up in the towns offering their crafts for sale. The connoisseur peers along the exhibition gallery with half-shut eyes bent sideways. Now, also going on at this time, New York City. Remember, Whitman was born in Long Island, but he lived in Brooklyn and loved to travel in Manhattan. There was a particular bus line, you know, the horse-drawn omnibus that went all the way uptown and downtown. He loved traveling on that, seeing everything. And this is when you're starting to get art galleries in New York and museums for the first time. And opera houses are starting to go up. Opera became a big thing. Whitman was a big opera fan. The connoisseur peers along the exhibition gallery with half-shut eyes bent sideways. As the deckhands make fast the steamboat, the plank is thrown for the shore-going passengers. The young sister holds out the skein while the elder sister, that's the wound up, what do you call it, thread?
Yarn.
Yarn, thank you, that's the word I was looking for. Well, the elder sister winds it off in a ball and stops now and then for the knots. The one-year wife is recovering and happy, having a week ago born her first child. The clean-haired Yankee girl works with her sewing machine or in the factory or mill. The paving man leans on his two-handed rammer. The reporter's lead flies swiftly over the notebook. That would be Whitman himself, taking notes on all of this stuff. The sign painter is lettering with blue and gold. The canal boy trots on the towpath. The bookkeeper counts at his desk. The shoemaker waxes his thread. The conductor beats time for the band and all the performers follow him. The child is baptized. The convert is making his first professions. The regatta, you know, that's a sailboat race. The regatta is spread on the bay. The race has begun. How the white sails sparkle. The drover watching his drove sings out to them that would stray. The drover is a guy that drives the cattle or the horses. The peddler sweats with his pack on his back, the purchaser higgling about the odd cent. The bride unrumples her white dress. The minute hand of the clock moves slowly, right? Waiting for the wedding to start. Seems like forever. The opium eater reclines with rigid hand and just opened lips. So again, nothing is left out. There's also, the really seedy parts of town in New York where you've got the opium dens. There's a wonderful, actually, one of my very favorite movies of all time. If you've never seen it, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. There's a terrific couple of scenes in an opium den. They were run by Chinese immigrants, and you would come in, you'd pay something, you'd lie down on a wooden bunk, and they'd come give you the opium pipe. You take a hit and all your troubles go away. The opium eater reclines with rigid head and just opened lips. The prostitute draggles her shawl. Her bonnet bobs on her tipsy and pimpled neck. Right? So she's drunk, she's tipsy. The crowd laugh at her blackguard oaths. The men jeer and wink to each other. Miserable. I do not laugh at your oaths, nor jeer you. Right? Just reminding us that to him, no one, even the most degraded, is not degraded to him because they're all the Buddha. They're all God. The president, holding a cabinet council, is surrounded by the great secretaries, right? The cabinet secretaries. Now, I want to point something out, which I don't think is accidental. Of all these dozens and dozens of vignettes, these dozens and dozens of people, look at these two adjacent ones, the prostitute, the president, right? Whitman's a poet. He doesn't do something like that by accident. The prostitute, right? As far as conventional values are concerned, the very lowest, the most degraded. The president, the very highest, the most exalted. The high and the low are on the same level. Each one is one of these the lines. Each one is the Buddha. And also notice prostitute, president. Each one starts with a P sound and ends with a T sound. Each one is 3 syllables with a stress on the first syllable. Prostitute, president. So the sound, again, underscores that the sound of them brings out the spiritual equivalence of them. That's really good stuff. That's skillful. On the piazza walk 3 matrons stately and friendly with twined arms. The crew of the fish smack pack repeated layers of halibut in the hold. The Missourian crosses the plains, toting his wares and his cattle as the fare collector go. So notice we're out in Missouri, which is the far west at that time. We're in New York, we're everywhere. As the fare collector goes through the train, he gives notice by the jingling of loose change. Notice the attention to detail. He's seeing everything, hearing everything. He doesn't have to say, pay, please, just jingles the loose change in his pocket. The floormen are laying the floor, the tinners are tinning the roof, the masons are calling for mortar. In single file, each shouldering his hod, pass onward the laborers. Seasons pursuing each other, the indescribable crowd is gathered. It is the 4th of 7th month. The 4th of July. What salutes of cannon and small arms. Seasons pursuing each other, the plower plows, the mower mows, and the winter grain falls in the ground. Notice not only all these places that are so diverse are all together, united, but all the time, all the seasons. The plower plows, that's spring. The mower mows, that's late summer or fall, harvest time. The winter grain falls on, there's the whole year in one line. Off on the lakes, the pike fisher watches and waits by the hole in the frozen surface. The stumps stand thick round the clearing. The squatter strikes deep with his axe. Flatboatmen make fast towards dusk near the cottonwood or pecan trees. Coon seekers go through the regions of the Red River or through those drained by the Tennessee or through those of the Arkansas. Torches shine in the dark that hangs on the Chattahoochee or Altamaha. Now, Notice there's a little break here now. We've had this long, long bit, right? We have one short bit at the beginning, then this long, long bit, then a space and a short bit at the end. Now notice at the very end of the middle section, torches shine in the dark that hangs. So he's bringing down the lights now. We've just had this stupendous tour of the United States, everywhere, east, west, every time, spring, winter, everyone, president, prostitute. How's he going to bring this to the end? How's he going to bring this to an end? He's got to use the lighting effects, bring the lights down. So he does this in the last bit. Patriarchs sit at supper with sons and grandsons and great-grandsons around them. In walls of adobe, in canvas tents, rest hunters and trappers after their day's sport. Right? Can you feel the day winding down? The lights coming down everywhere, everywhere. The city sleeps and the country sleeps. The living sleep for their time. The dead sleep for their time. Wow. See what he did there? We're feeling the natural rhythm of this, the natural rhythm of the seasons, the natural rhythm of day and night. Everything sleeps for a while, then wakes up. And then we get the living sleep for their time, right? And then wake up. The dead sleep for their time. And by implication, then they wake up. Everything in these beautiful rhythms. And later in the poem, he'll talk more overtly about this, that the dead sleep only for some time, then they come back. The old husband sleeps by his wife, and the young husband sleeps by his wife. And these tend inward to me. Right? These. What does these refer to? Everything, everyone, all the places, all the activities, all the people that we've seen in this incredible section 15. These tend inward to me, and I tend outward to them. It's like a mandala. You all know what a mandala looks like? Look at it, Google it afterward if you don't. M-A-N-D-A-L-A. It's like, do I have one here to show you?
Mandala.
Yeah, you'll hear it pronounced mandala or mandala, right? So it's this circular. You get it in Hindu and Buddhist sacred art. It's like an incredibly detailed circular design that's basically like a wiring diagram of the universe, kind of like a blueprint of consciousness and manifestation, being, and so it's as if he's presenting all of these parts, and now pointing out it's a mandala with the self, the poet, observing it all at the center, at the hub of the mandala. And these tend inward, right? All the spokes, and these tend inward to me, and I tend outward to them. That word tend is so brilliant, right? It's so kind of appropriately abstract, undefined. You can't say these are me, I am them, I relate to them. No, they tend toward me, I tend toward them. Perfect. And such as it is to be of these, more or less, I am. And of these, one and all, I weave the song of myself. Man, oh man. Okay. When I read something like this, I just, I pray for skill. I pray for skill to be able to convey some sense of how great this stuff is. So I hope you're getting some of that,
Yes,
sense. Good,
Mm-hmm.
good. I was sort of thinking that today would be our last day on Whitman, but nah.
Good.
Okay. We're going on. Okay. We got to do at least one. We got to do one more week of Whitman. Yeah. Good stuff. Okay. So, thank you everyone for dropping by.
Well, thank you.
So good to see you.
Thank you.
And what was I going to say? Yeah, if you haven't checked your news in the last few hours, check the headlines. There's some for a change. There's some real good news.
Yes. I saw it.
Let me just say, rock'em sock'em.
Exactly. Good.
So, may all beings be happy. May peace prevail everywhere. May the bad people crawl back under their rock
Okay.
quickly, please.
May they be enlightened.
Yes. May they be enlightened and become good people. But meanwhile, while we're waiting,
Mm,
see you later.
go away. Yeah,
Go
exactly.
away.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.